Hello everyone. This video is part of a series where we are exploring TypeScript's features with the help of a React application. Our main goal is to learn how we can better type our code so that we can improve confidence and velocity during development. In the previous video, we have implemented the product card React component, and the product card React component uses a couple of components that are provided by Material UI. So for example, the card or the card actions, the typography, and also the card content. We have also used the makeStyles utility function, which receives an object that defines a couple of styles, and it returns a function that can be called from within our React component. So we will call this function useStyles within our product card, and this is going to return an object that we can then use in order to access those files or those styles that we have previously defined. Our goal for this video is to bring our application to this state where we have a bunch of cards that are displayed side by side and a responsive application. So if I make the screen smaller, at some point we will display only 2 columns instead of 3. And if I make the application small enough, we will display only 1 column. How are we going to achieve that? Well, the first element that we need to discuss, or the first concept, is the concept of a breakpoint. What is a breakpoint? Well, for all the major UI frameworks out there, there are a couple of breakpoints that define when some elements of our UI are going to be redimensioned. Right, so as you can see, as I move my cursor here left and right, I have the width changing on the top right corner. So the width is here, right? And if I start moving my cursor to the left, you'll see it's decreasing up to the point that, oops, now I am small enough. The width is small enough in order to change from 3 columns to 2 columns. So as you can see, 1280 is, or it seems to be, the breakpoint between these two styles. Now if I decrease even more the size of my screen, then you will see that again, once I start increasing it slowly, 600 seems to be the other breakpoint. So here is a summary of the default breakpoints used by Material UI, and this may vary if you're using another framework such as Bootstrap or Ionic, or I think Ant-D is also Ant-Design is a very popular framework, but they all have this concept of a breakpoint, right? So for Material UI, between 0 and 600 pixels width, I'm going to be in the range of size XS. Then between 600 and 960, that's going to be SM. Then between 960 and 1280, that's going to be MD, and so on. You can check here all the specific breakpoints. This gives us the boundaries, let's call it like so. So the boundaries that we want to define our responsive grid. But we still need to use something. We need to use a component that is going to implement this reactive behavior. And for that, we will use the grid component from Material UI. So the grid component already provides this functionality out of the box, and it allows us to create such a responsive grid. Let's go through each of the components or some of the options in details one by one. The first one is we need to wrap our grid elements or our grid items with a grid container. So as you can see, I am using the grid component and I am passing a container prop. Now, when I pass a prop like this without assigning it any value, this is the same thing as defining it as a boolean and setting that boolean to true. Right? So if I don't pass the container prop, if I simply erase this container, then the container, let's say the container prop in the internal grid component, so once we access the value of that container prop in the grid component, this is going to be marked as false. If I pass the container prop like so, then it's going to be marked as true. So this grid component is a container. Now the internal or the inner grid component here is not a container because it does not have the container prop. but it is an item because it has the item prop. And the outer grid component is not an item, but it is a container. So that's it for how we can create grid components or grid elements in Material UI. Now let's discuss a little bit the breakpoints. As you can see, we have here a keyword or a prop called XS. And this defines how many columns this internal grid item is going to occupy, already considering the size XS and any size larger than that. So whenever we pass a prop here with a certain breakpoint, this is going to say, okay, from this size upwards, then take these many columns in the screen. Now, Material UI by default uses 12 columns. So the width of the screen or the width of the window is going to be defined into 12 columns. Not, to be more precise, not the width of the window, but the width of the component, right? So as you can see here, we have a component, and within this component, within this element, the Material UI divides this into 12 columns. And then I can say, okay, the first one is going to occupy the full 12 columns already from the size XS up. The second one is going to occupy 6 columns. The third one is also going to occupy 6 columns, and the other ones will each occupy 3 columns. Now Material UI is going to look at these numbers and it's going to try to fit them into a 12 column pattern or a 12 column design. If it manages to fit, then it's going to display the items side by side. So for example, 6 plus 6 equals 12. So it fits in the 12 columns. So I will display it side by side. If it does not fit, then it's going to break the component that doesn't fit to the next line. Let's see an example. I will edit this in the code sandbox. Give it a couple of seconds for it to start up. And we have the exact same setup that we have here in the Material UI documentation. So let's come to the demo file, right? So demo.tsx, and let's try to change the third grid item to actually have a width of 8 columns. I would change to 8 columns, and as you can see, it immediately breaks the component down to the next row because there is not enough space in the row above. However, the first component that takes up 3 columns still has space in this new row that was created by the component that takes 8 columns, because 8 plus 3 equals 11. So Material UI can fit all of this in the 12 columns. However, the next component, the second component that takes up 3 columns, it doesn't have enough space. It only has 1 column left, right? So it has to be taken to the next line or to the next row. Let's come back here, and for the second component that takes 3 columns, let's change this to 1 column. And the moment I change this to 1 column, and I'll just erase this for better readability, like so. The moment I redefine it to take up 1 column, then Material UI automatically positions it next to the first component that takes 3 columns in the grid, right? So this is how UI or how Material UI handles responsiveness in our application. For, I think, most of our purposes, this is already more than enough. Okay, if we reach any state where we need to do some configuration by hand, we will create a couple of configs or a couple of styles by ourselves. But so far, I think we can achieve what we want with only this configuration. So let me close this. Yes, I want to leave the website. Let's go back to our React application. I will expand this. And I just want to give you a last overview of what we want to achieve, because now I will start my new React application, or I will actually start my application, and this old version is going to disappear, right? Because I reset the code. So I'll run yarn start. Give it a couple of seconds for it to load. And you'll see that we will be back to our initial application. Exactly. So this very ugly application. Let's do a bit of refactoring before we introduce the grid components into our application. The first refactoring we want to do is we want to extract the components from the app functional component into their own component. So normally in a React application, what you would see is you would see a pages directory under the source directory. This will define all the different pages of your application. It may be the case that your application has only one page, and then we will have only one page here. Then it would be okay to use the app.tsx, but still, for clarity, I prefer to always list it down under the pages directory. So I'll just create a new file, home.tsx, and another file, index.ts. I will then come back to the app.tsx file. I'll cut all the code and I will add it to the home.tsx. I will define a function component and I will return the code that I had before in my app.tsx file. I will also bring my first product into the home.tsx file so that I can access it within my component, and I will remove this unwanted or unnecessary button component. Okay, now I have a couple of unused imports here that I can remove, and here in my home.tsx file I will export the home component as our default export. Within my index.ts, I will then name this home or name this default export as home, and it will be accessible to the external world directly from the pages directory as a named home import. So within my app.tsx, I will simply return home, like so. I don't need to pass any props, because the home component does not expect any props in its declaration. This component is not used anymore. For practice, I just put the React component always, or the React import always at the topmost line of my files. And I like to add a couple of spaces here just to keep things a little bit cleaner. So let me save and let's see if everything is still working as expected. Exactly, everything is working as expected. We have now just the card and we can actually remove a couple of additional files. So I will open this index.tsx file and I will remove the index.css. This is not necessary anymore. I will also remove the app.css, and within my app.tsx I will remove that import line. I'll save this and everything is still compiling to exactly the same code as before, okay, or exactly the same output as before. So within my home component, I actually would like to have not just a product card, but a product list, right? So let's come here to the components folder and I'll create a new file, which is going to be called product-list.tsx. Now in this file, we are going to implement our product list component. So I will define a function, const product list is an arrow function, and this const product list is going to return some component, which is going to be wrapped with a div. This is just one peculiarity of React. We cannot return more than one top level HTML or JSX component, right? So if I were to try to return a second div component without a wrap or without another component wrapping these two, then React would complain. Okay, this is because of the way that React works. So within my div component, I would then start implementing my grid. Let's go back to the Material UI documentation and let's have a look at the pattern that we want to implement. So first and foremost, let's import the grid component from Material UI /core/grid, like so. We also want to import React from React, like this. And here we would like to return a grid component that is going to contain a couple of items. Now this is going to be a container, right? So it's going to be a grid container. And we also want to have, well, maybe this spacing we could add here. We could see what this is going to do. I'm not sure, but I think it's not necessary. I mean, I will leave it here because of the documentation. We could actually see how this changes once we change it in the sandbox. Let's have a look. I think this may affect the spacing between the columns, right? So if I come here to demo and I completely remove spacing, let's see. Oh, that's very ugly, right? So let's leave the spacing. It can be 3, it can be 2 if you want a smaller spacing. Let's leave it at 3. So it's a necessary prop for us to have a component that displays correctly on the screen. Now, I would then like to have a couple of grid items. So let's start with the first one, grid item, like so. And within here, I would like to have my product card. So I will come to the home component. I will remove the product card from here. And I'm sorry for shuffling the product card component so much, but I think we can do that step by step, right? So the product card is here, and I will also take my first product and paste this in the product list file. Now what I can do is that I can use the product list within the home component, like so, and import it. So I didn't export it yet from my file here. Let's export this as the default, not the product card, but the product list. And then within my index.ts, I will also export the default as product list from .product list. Okay. Now it should be possible, or I should be able to import my product list from my components folder, and I'll save. Let's see if there are any errors here. No, compiled successfully. Now our application is looking exactly the same. So as you can see, there is a component that is missing here, and I think that this is not listed in this documentation, so it's not very friendly, or maybe it's because we are missing a couple of other product or other grid items. Let's go back to our grid item here, and let's say that in the XS we are going to take 12 columns, right? Like so. And then I will save this, and let's see if this is going to change something. Oh, not really. Well, maybe you have a clue of what is happening, or maybe you are really not that, or you were not able to identify it yet. But what is happening here is that we are missing something that is very important for Material UI. Even though we are defining the grid component, look here, we are defining the grid component, we are forgetting a very basic wrapper component that is required by Material UI. Let me open the container page. And this container page is what we want to use in order to make sure that we add those left margins and right margins, so left margins and right margins to our application. So how do we use the container? Well, the container is a simple, very straightforward tag with container, and we will add this container to our app.tsx. Why will we add the container to our app.tsx? Well, it's because I want to display every single component or every single page following the same container standards, right? It could be the case that I want to have an additional page, like a checkout page or something. I would still like the left and the right margins to be the same. Now, if you are developing an application and thinking, okay, maybe I want to have a dashboard where I don't want to have a left margin and I don't want to have a right margin, I just want to have a full width, like full width and full height screen, then maybe it would be the case that you would not wrap your whole application with this container. But for our purposes here, we can start with this. If we see that this is not scalable and we say, okay, we would have some pages that we would like to have no container whatsoever, then we can simply come to the app component and move the container to within the home component. Okay, so I will simply copy and paste. I'm sorry for copying and pasting so much, but this already gives us all the necessary information that we need to implement the container above here. I'll copy this and I will paste it here. And as you can see, well, I need to wrap this in a div or in a React fragment. Now, React fragment is a utility component from React, and it does pretty much the same job as a div, so like a standalone div, in the way that it wraps all our internal components so that we return only one component from the function. But the difference is that React.fragment does not add an additional node to the DOM element. So if we have a lot of divs that have only the function of wrapping our React components, it could be better to use React.fragment so that we would have a cleaner DOM. Let's do that. Instead of using the div, why not go full React mode here and use React fragment? So React fragment, and now we will take all this, put inside of the React fragment, and the home is going to substitute the typography component. Now, as you can see, the imports are of course missing, so I will just copy these 3 imports and paste here on the top, and the unused typography, I will get rid of it. I'll then save my application, and let's see how it looks on the browser. Give it a couple of seconds. It has compiled. Oh, much better. Now it's much better. Now we have that nice left and right margin to our application. What we are going to do is also to change the max width to be of large instead of small. Now this also has to do with our breakpoints, right? So now, as you can see, it's a little bit larger, and it's going to have a maximum width of 1280 pixels. So expand this a little bit. And as you can see, the more I expand, now it's centered with a fixed width. If I take the mouse inspector here and I hover over this, you will see that the width of the component is actually not directly for the whole thing here. So for this component, as you can see, it has a width of 1280 here, right? Max width 1280. Great. Now we are able to have a much nicer display on the screen. Maybe we change this styling afterwards, but again, styling is not our priority here. However, I want to add a little bit of top margin here. So within my home component, I could actually come to the home component here, and then I can add some margin to my wrapper div element. Now, why am I using the wrapper div element here? Well, here I want to add a couple of classes, so a couple of styles. And if I want to add a style, I need to have a DOM node, right? So if I use React fragment, I don't have that DOM node, and I'm not able to add the styles. So I'll use the div element here, and I will follow the same pattern as we have in our product card. So I will import make styles, like so. Import make styles from material UI, and I will then declare a const use styles. I'll just copy this like so, and I'm interested only in the root key. This doesn't need to be root, it can be anything, it can be wrapper, for example. Okay, and here I will say a padding top of 16 pixels. Then within my function component, I am going to call this use styles function, and then I have access to the classes that I have defined. And within my div component, within the class name, I'll say classes.wrapper. Okay, if I save this, now, oops, I think I made a typo. That should be 16, not 26, but you can see that we already have some padding here to the top, right? So I'll just save this, and the padding is going to reduce a little bit. Exactly, much better like this. The final element that is missing here is the responsive behavior, right? So let's try to copy and paste a bunch of grid elements. Let's put 6 grid elements like so. I will save this. And as you can see, I have 6 grid elements that are stacked one on the top of another. And this is not what we wanted to achieve. What we wanted to achieve is that for larger screens, we would have 3 columns. For medium screens, we would have 2 columns. And for very small screens, then yes, we would have 1 column, right? Like so. Let's try to do that by using the breakpoints. So now I will say that for very small screens, I want 12 columns. For medium screens, meaning that when it starts at the SM breakpoint, so you could say that the medium screens starts at the medium breakpoint, and okay, I agree with you, that's right. But here, I think that the small breakpoint is already large enough for us to have 2 columns. If we see that this is not friendly enough from a UX perspective, we will change this in the future. But here we will say that from the small breakpoint on, we want to have 6 columns, and then from the large breakpoint on, sorry, not 6 columns, but we want a single element to span over 6 columns, and then from the large breakpoint we want the elements to span over 4 columns, right? So now I'll copy this and paste in all grid elements. I'll save my application and I'll see whether the behavior is as we want. Let me go back to the console here just to have a cleaner interface. I can actually use the responsive behavior here, so I can expand this. Oops, let me just get it right, like so. Okay, now we will expand. As you can see, if I move here the right bar to the left or to the right, it's already updating the value here in the width, right? So I will start moving it right, and as you can see, when I get to 600, I switch to having 2 columns, right? So now I have 2 columns. Then I keep expanding it, and once I reach the 1280, I should switch to 3 columns. Exactly, now I switch to 3 columns. Great. The only thing that I'm observing is that when it's too small, then I kind of lose that right margin, but I think that that's okay for us for the moment. Okay, so I wouldn't say this is a major problem, because it's very unlikely we will have a very small device like this. If I try to simulate the iPhone 5 has a width of 320 and it already displays quite nicely. So because we are developing this application for, well, at least a screen of the size of iPhone 5, then I think we don't need to worry that much about very, very small screens. Okay, great. I'll expand this a little bit and I'll get out of the responsive mode, and we have accomplished what we wanted to do for this video. So if you want to get notifications every time a new video is available in the channel, then make sure to subscribe and you'll get a small reminder every time I upload something new. I try to upload videos every day, at least 2 videos a day, and so far I have been successful. Also, if you're interested in a couple of topics related to development, make sure to write down a comment in the video and detail the topic so that I can keep in mind as well when planning for future series in the channel. And if you see any topic that also interests you but someone else posted, then give it a thumbs up. The more popular a topic is, the more likely that topic is to be chosen for future series. Okay? So thank you for your time, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.